And we're back. I'm Professor Scott Plum with the Minnesota Sales Institute with Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Great to talk to you, Scott, and welcome to our listeners, both old and new. Acquiring a new customer can cost 4 to 5 times as much as retaining a current customer. Meanwhile, the success rate of selling new products or services to an existing customer is over 50%, whereas the success rate of getting a new customer may be as low as 5%. Obviously, it is worth our time to concentrate on developing the accounts we already have. On today's show, Scott and I will discuss major account strategy and other great information designed for the sales professional on episode 410 of the Get in the Door podcast.
Our chapter today is on managing your environment, going first class, out of the book, The Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz. This is a good chapter, a good reminder.
Oh my gosh, it's a good one. Oh
yeah, and I just think we have to really put ourselves in perspective on where we are in certain environments, who the people are that we're around, and the positions of the people that we're around, and be able to know where we are. I sort of call it the map of the mall. Where are we? The map on the mall. You are here with everything going on and all the perspective that we have.
Right. I always called it the power of association. Who do I spend my time with?
Mm-hmm. It's like guilty by association too.
Right.
I think that one of my favorite quotes, and I put it in my book by Charlie Tremendous Jones, and that is that you're the same person you are 5 years from now, except for the people that you meet and the books that you read. So if you think about it, we have to constantly be learning, and leaders are readers, and thinking about where are we getting information. And I want to congratulate and applaud all of our listeners for our podcast, because they're listening to the podcast, they're getting information, they're believing the information will work, they have the guts and courage to apply the information, and when they do, they get a different result. I guarantee you will get a different result. That's an absolute. Now, is it going to be a better result? Most of the time, yes. Is it going to be a different result? Guaranteed. Improve it as you go and refine it and figure out what worked. If you had a chance to do it over again, what would you do different? And that's the debriefing step of every sales call. If we don't debrief, we're going to continue to screw up on the same things that we do over and over again. I think there's a lot of salespeople that have 25 years experience. No, not really. They have the same week of experience
over and over and over again.
And they've done it for the last 25 years. And then
I've met people, Scott, said after they finished school, whether it was high school or college, I'm never going to read another book again.
Okay.
I'm done learning. And it's just amazing, because as your quote from Charles Tremendous Jones, if you don't put good input in, you're not going to change for the positive. You are going to be sinking. I hear all the time now, people are so careful about the food they put in their body. Make sure you're drinking 6 gallons of water a day. And I'm gluten sensitive, and I can't eat anything that's gluten sensitive, and I won't do. And then they'll sit down and they'll watch the crappiest TV shows about the worst kind of people, and listen to the radio about all the arguments going on. And they'll put all that crap in their mind and not even think about it. So what I want people to think about is start to be as careful about what you put in your mind as you are about what you put in your body. And let's create a better mind, because that's going to make you a lot more money than your body is going to make you.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to associations as group and associate who you hang around with, I think there's obviously some overlap there. We're both involved in PSA. You're current president. I'm the past president of the organization. And I really stress that there's 3 reasons on why somebody should get involved in an organization like PSA, the Professional Sales Association. And that is the skill development. So learning the skills that we know that we need to improve on. The second is everything that is talked about and introduced is built on developing your career. So you're going to get information that you're not aware of. However, it is in the career path that you've picked of sales. And the third is the social interaction of like-minded people that have a career of sales. And when you talk to like-minded people, iron sharpens iron, and people become more engaged. They end up sharing information. They talk about different challenges or dilemmas, or they're able to hoot and holler together too,
Right.
and being able to have that social interaction. So that's what's really important about being a part of an association.
What's the value of an idea?
It depends on the
Right.
application, right?
Right. But you
Yeah.
you get around people that are exploring new ideas in your field of endeavor, which is sales,
Mm-hmm.
and you can pick up an idea it's just a small spark. Oh, that's a really good question that I could ask, or I really like the way that they approach that call. Let me try that. Let me, as you say, apply that.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it can be worth thousands of dollars to you. And it was just a little germ of a spark of an idea that made you change something that you were doing just a little non-productively to be more productive.
And I think as we meet those people, we're going to find that there are some differences that we have with other people, and we're going to be able to learn from them. Because if we're just talking to the people that are like us and agree with us, we're not going to be able to grow and change and develop. We're just going to get reinforced on our own bias, on our own judgment. And sometimes that's the road right over the cliff when we do that.
Well, sometimes I think you and I agree too much on things. Sometimes we need to.
Yeah, well, that's true.
We need to duke it out a little bit more.
We're like-minded. However, we have disagreed on some points.
That's true.
I've elaborated, and you've elaborated, and we've gone on to add better thoughts to it.
That's right. So, what would your summary of this chapter be? What should people do differently?
Well, I think that a culture is defined by what leadership is willing to tolerate. And if you think about who's in charge of your life, is it you, or is it your sales manager, or is it the president of the company? And when we tolerate certain things within ourselves and we don't challenge ourselves, or somebody else is not challenging us, we become stagnant and we end up becoming complacent. And then we end up stopping and not learning. And if we're anything like what's going on in the world right now, with a third of the population is suffering from clinical anxiety and depression, it's like it's very depressing because of the uncertainty, and we can't move, and we don't feel in control.
So it's harder to do that association you were talking about.
Yeah, it is. And I think we're all in the area of personal development. We all are in a bit of self-determination, which for my faith kind of runs contrary to God's plan and God's will for me. But I struggle with that every single day. But I always get up and I get out there and I just, let God direct me based on where he thinks I should go. But I can't just lay in bed and expect something to come to me. Right. That ain't going to happen.
Well, I heard God can't steer a parked car.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're a believer and you want God to help you move forward and let him adjust what you're doing rather than trying to make magic happen for you from, as you said, from the bed. So, yeah, I would agree. I think the most important thing is find positive and successful people, associate with them, and allow them to set a better standard for you, to pull you up into that vacuum. Get with people that are better than you and allow them to draw you up. And I think that's what he means by manage that environment and go first class.
Mm-hmm. I think when you look at what groups you're a part of, if you're the smartest person in the group, I think you need to find another group.
There you go.
And find somebody that's going to be smarter than you. That doesn't mean that you abandon all groups, but think about the groups where you're able to contribute, and then also think about the groups that you're able to learn from too.
Well, our next topic we want to talk about is major account strategy, and the thought that it's cheaper and easier to grow a current account than it is to find a new one. And I don't want that to let all the salespeople out there off the hook and say, well, then I guess I don't need to go out and prospect and develop new accounts. I think that's always part of it. But within this plan, looking at how I can maximize the companies that I'm already working with. Right now we are in a difficult time. And I think it's a great time to have more conversations with the companies that we're already doing business with. So my first step when I'm going to develop an account strategy or help a company develop an account strategy is first to determine which accounts are worth developing. Not all of your accounts have the same value. Some of the indicators that we look for those companies that we want to develop an account strategy for, which does take some work, one is potential. Is there room to grow in this? Are there other products, services we could sell within this account or within other divisions in this account? Number two, it's probably a high income type of account. So we're already doing a lot of business with them. And number three, they're friendly toward us. They like working with us. We have good friendships. We have strong bonds within that. And number four is we share values. The more and more I think about selling, the more I'm looking for companies that share my values. It's much easier to sell to a company that values what I value and what our company does versus trying to convince them that they should change their whole value proposition. So those are the four areas that I want to look for a company: potential, high income, friendly toward us, and shared values.
What would be a good sort of a barometer? How do you measure those four areas?
Well, you measure them against what you already have.
Okay.
Right? You measure them against the other companies. You can't really measure them against some kind of a perfect customer. So I have a rating system that I look for when we go in and look at companies, and we actually measure about 10 different items, and then we just compare them to each other. And it's in often cases it's the salesperson's opinion, right?
Mm-hmm,
Now,
mm-hmm.
income is not an opinion thing, that's a fact. But potential is a decision that the salesperson has to make. Do we have shared values? Well, if they're buying what we have now and they're friendly and easy, they probably have shared values. So we rate them on a number of different issues, and then we look for those best opportunities, and those are the ones that we develop a major account strategy for. How about you? How do you look at your major accounts or growing the current accounts that you have?
I look at I look at five things. I look at first getting new customers. So that's more of the outside sales rep versus the inside account manager. So as Bill mentioned when we first started this segment, is we can't rely on future income coming from existing accounts. We have to look at the percentage of revenue from existing and percentage of revenue from new. Always focus on new first. However, the cost of acquisition is greater than existing. We also need to focus on retention. The cost of acquisition is obviously less. There's greater profit margin in existing. But if we focus all on existing, we lose existing. We end up dulling our sales skills. We end up losing our momentum, and we end up having to work tremendously harder to try to get new accounts. So get new accounts would be the first thing. The second thing is getting existing accounts to increase their quantity. So how can you sell more of the same items to your existing accounts? Number three is getting existing customers to diversify their selection. So selling more items to an existing account. Number four is get your existing customers to increase their frequency. So instead of once a quarter, maybe they're doing once every 6 weeks, or they're doing it once every month. So they're increasing their frequency. And the last one is getting your existing customers to pay more for the same items. So you go through that gradual price increase, justifying the price increase, giving more value, offering more service, giving them greater confidence, reducing the cost and consequences of them switching to, and maintaining that relationship with your existing accounts. But when we look at new sales versus existing sales, our sales cycle is going to be different. Our sales process is going to be different. We need to be conscious of that. So one cannot equal the other. We have to continuously ask ourselves, with new versus existing, what is the goal of each, and how are we measuring success? With an existing account, how are we measuring success? Is it retention? Is it percentage of growth in product sales? Is it increasing the gross profit margin? Is it maintaining them over a longer period of time, selling more products or services, et cetera? And then really, what does success look like?
Well, and I think that can be different for every account.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
We're looking at these four different areas other than getting new customers: increasing quantity, diversifying, increasing frequency, or paying more. And in all those cases, I may have account A, I might be able to increase quantity. Account B, I might be able to increase frequency. So that's why I have to develop a plan for those rather than just hoping that these things happen. Now, you talked about inside versus outside sales. I find, unfortunately, it's more the rarity that there's an inside sales structure in an organization. For most structures that I work with, most companies that I work with seem to have the same person farming as hunting. So I am responsible for creating new accounts, but I'm also responsible for working with the accounts that I currently have. And so maybe I have a sales assistant of some kind. That would be great. But for the most part, I've just got the order entry people that take the sales and move them forward for me. So most of the companies, they're doing both the inside and the outside sales. Now, I think there's better ways to do it than that. But if you are a salesperson and that's your structure, you have to do both. And that's, I guess, what we want to focus on today is what's your plan for developing these new clients? And I think for most people, their plan is, gee, if they want more, they'll buy more.
Right. Yeah.
One of I call them the 7 deadly sins of selling, but one of the 7 deadly sins is expecting good customer service and good service to equal future sales. And that's not enough. You have to aggressively develop that company just the same way you would aggressively go out and try to find new customers. Do you find, Scott, that some companies that you work with pay more for new customers, new customer income, and less for developing old customers?
Well, and unfortunately, that can be the truth more common than we'd like to think, because the bucket has a hole in it. They end up working so hard to acquire new ones, but then they don't work to retain them. They might not follow through on all the promises that they offer. They acquire somebody, but they don't deliver on it. Or the person that is in charge of the account is so focused on getting new business that they end up stop servicing existing business. I see this a lot in the insurance industry. You see an agent that goes out, gets a policy, the policy holder becomes part of the carrier's company. And then when there's a claim, the policyholder calls the insurance agent, and the insurance agent doesn't follow up on the claim, doesn't give them the service. And then the policyholder goes, what did I buy? And then finally, when the insurance agent calls back, it says, on claims, you're supposed to call the 800 number. Well, really, what is the goal of the carrier? What is the goal is to minimize the payout. So are they really offering the service? And then the insurance agent is going, well, wait a minute. I work so hard to get them, and I end up getting a commission on new accounts, but I also get a commission on retained accounts. And now I got my carrier working against me on retaining my accounts because their goal is different.
Yeah, there's a lot of industries that pay you for the first 4 or 5 years of that policy, and then it drops off to almost nothing. So there's no incentive then to support the policyholders that you already have.
Yeah.
That's the kind of attitude, the attitude that you're talking about, call the 1-800 number, is what makes people go online and shop.
Exactly.
I don't need a personal relationship if that personal relationship with the salesperson isn't going to bring me a benefit of quality service when I ask for it.
And they've commoditized their own service.
That's right. That's right.
And they compete against their sales agents by commoditizing the service.
Yeah.
And
well, I want to talk a little bit about the plan. So if I'm gonna develop these accounts, and you can jump in on any of these.
Yeah.
But here's some of the things that we found that you need to think about as you're going to develop. So you've identified the ones that are a good opportunity. They have the growth. They have the shared value. They have potential. Now we want to look at the company structure. So we want to see where we can expand. What's the company structure? What are the other divisions? Who are the other people within the division that I'm already working with? And can I have conversations with some of the people I already know? Will they introduce me to like-minded people, like titled people in other divisions? What are the growth opportunities? I identify those. So who can I talk to? What are the departments that I should develop in those companies? And then I have to take what I call potential growth actions. So these are the actions. Can I get introductions? Can I do a strategic analysis for you? Can I get in and do an account review so that we're back in talking again? And is there a way that I can become an industry expert so that I can start going beyond just being another salesperson to somebody who's a counselor, a consultant, and an industry expert? So find out the company structure, look for growth opportunities, and then see what the growth actions you can take to start moving that company forward with your plan.
Mm-hmm. All great things. I want to add a few things to be cautious of as you're doing that. And the first is be cautious of becoming just an order taker and being too focused on their needs and not the needs of the company. Not, you're the seller, you're working for the supplier, you're a sales rep for them. So just don't be an order taker. That's not sales. That's an order taker. The second one is not seeking additional opportunities within your customer's company. So sellers need to continue to add new additional products and services. So look for more opportunities, and this is more of the opportunity management aspect of the account. The third is ask for testimonials and referrals and recommendations. When you do a great job and everything's going well, and you check in with your client, your customer, once a month or once a week, and you just ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we doing?
Right.
Well, they say, oh, well, you're doing great. You say, well, what number would you give us? Well, we give you a 10. Okay, fabulous. I really appreciate that. Would you mind? What is it about us that gives us a 10 is what you'd want to ask. Well, you do this, this, and this. Okay, great. Would you mind putting that in writing? Or is it okay if I write that up and then email it to you? And then maybe you might put that on my LinkedIn page, or you might want to do a video or give us a testimonial or recommendation that we can end up putting on our website. Because we constantly want to be able to fulfill the promises that we give new customers. And you're an existing customer, so it shows that we're following through. Another thing to be aware of is be cautious of a customer or a client that has over 20% of your revenue. I've seen this happen too often.
And we've all dealt with that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Scott?
You get two clients that all of a sudden added together are 40% of a company's revenue. And unfortunately, they're from the same industry. And when that industry gets hit, all of a sudden, boom, there's 40% of your revenue is being
somebody
threatened.
shot your elephant.
Yeah. And now
we've all had our elephant shot.
So who are you going to cut?
My elephant died by the company got sold.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then all my contacts were gone because they were all in the executive suite, and they all took their money and they were gone. And so was my business.
Right. Boy, in a case like that, I like to use the term anchoring. So make sure that you're anchored to more than one person at the company, so that if one leaves, you've got two other, and if two leave, you still got one other, and diversify your anchors as to who you're staying in touch with. So you got to be able to stay in the game. So I touched on it a little bit with the 20% in the same industry. So diversify your industries that you're selling to, and you're not going to be affected when one industry starts to tank. You're still going to have these other industries that are going to hold you up a little bit.
Yeah, I was talking with a client just yesterday, and one of their issues is that most of their customers are on the same buying cycle, meaning that they buy a lot in the fall, they buy a lot in the spring, and they don't do much in the summer or the winter.
Ooh, right.
And what they were talking about is they need to diversify when people buy. So they're starting to look for customers who have a buying cycle in the winter and the summer, so that they can smooth out their employee needs, right? The way the employees are used a little bit more effectively. So it could be within industries, but it can also be within how they buy. If you look at a ski place, they'll also sell roller inline skates, right? So we have the summer customers and we have the winter customers. So I think that's what you're talking about, is make sure you're diversified so that you're spread out a little bit more evenly for whatever that sales cycle is.
Yeah. And in some of the content that I shared, I might have gotten, a little discombobulated with how I presented stuff. This is a very touchy and sensitive topic when it comes to servicing existing accounts and going out and getting new accounts. And like I said, the sales process is different. If you're in sales leadership or you're running a company and you've got a sales team that is selling and servicing, and you want to talk about how to work on making that program more efficient, I welcome a phone call. I mean, Bill and I would be happy to talk with you about how can you take the sales channel, how can you maximize all of the time and effort that everybody has in the sales channel, maximize the sales, retain as many customers as possible, manage the gross margin, and create a compensation plan where everybody is happy at the end of the day, including leadership. And leadership is going, that was a great day. That was a great week. That was a great month. I'd like to do that again. And everybody in the organization is happy about that. So if you're in that position, you want to talk to Bill and I, we welcome your phone call or email.
Yeah, I think we have to look at it as a business. We have to look at it as income. When it increases, it's always good. If that increase isn't a good thing because we're not making money on it, or because that customer is too much of a pain, and that's one of the things we always look at when we're evaluating customers, is this customer really making us any money? I don't want to grow an account that's not making me any money, and that's a big pain for everybody to work with. I want my competitors to have that account. So how can we grow those best companies that make us a good income, that are easy to work with because we have shared values? So it's really important to identify those companies that are best to work with and do more of it. And those companies that are hard to work with, they don't get the same level of service, the same level of effort, because they're just not making us any money. We need to make sure that we're putting our effort and time into those companies that value us, and not those companies that just beat us up. And we do have customers that just beat us up all the time. They're not valuable customers.
I know one manufacturing company, 80% of the revenue came from one client that cost them money.
Mm.
And they had to make up all of their profit from the 20% of the other clients that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, they should have looked at that company that brought in 80% of the revenue, but cost them money, and figure out how to manage that relationship so that it's profitable, value is exchanged on both sides, or terminate the relationship. That's a very difficult situation. It doesn't happen overnight, though, either.
Well,
it grows.
That's right. It happens. And we keep giving discounts and discounts and discounts till we're not making any money, because they are the elephant.
Right.
And we're not going to make up on volume what we're losing if we're losing everything on volume. It reminds me of the story of Sven and Ole, who went into the business of selling hay. And they bought a truck, and there was no hay in Minnesota, so they went out to North Dakota and bought bales of hay and bought them for $20, and came back and sold them for $10. And they kept losing money on it. And Sven said, "Ole, what are we going to do?" He said, "Well, I think we need a bigger truck." And if you're selling things for less than you're making them for, it doesn't matter how big your truck is, you're going to lose money on it. So as Scott says, look at the value of that customer, not just in their size, but in if they're profitable. And if they're not profitable, you're going to have to change your whole structure of how you're doing business with them. So I guess we're getting a little bit away from the sales part of it, though, because for the salesperson, what's really important to them is, how can I grow this account? How can I develop new customers, which is one thing we talk about a lot, but in here we want to talk about, how can I grow this account? So I'm going to just summarize what I had, and Scott, let you summarize.
Okay.
But look for those companies that you want to develop a growth strategy for. We look at potential, income. Are they friendly to us, and do we share values? Then develop a plan by looking at their company structure and developing those growth opportunities through growth actions. Get introductions to new people, do strategic analysis, account reviews, become an industry expert. And then when those best opportunities come up, get started on them and take advantage of those opportunities.
And Bill mentioned that we might be getting a little bit in the weeds here, but it's all relevant to this topic of managing existing accounts. We have to really be cautious about being complacent with the accounts that we have and being satisfied with the relationships that we have, and not have a plan of getting new accounts and managing that relationship so that we maintain profitability and continue to exchange value. I think as I was listening to Bill talk about Sven and Ole, there's the quote that we lose money on every sale, but we make it up on volume, which is simply not smart business. So this is an important topic, just like negotiation and managing objections is. Do salespeople negotiate? They're not really supposed to be negotiating. They're supposed to be selling. Now, there's some aspects of it, but be very cautious of it. And sometimes we're handling and managing objections versus negotiating. There's a lot of areas to it that cannot be taken out of context. And if you're in a position of leadership, you want to talk to Bill and I, we welcome your phone calls.
This segment of the Get in the Door podcast is brought to you by Steve Kloida's book, The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Getting in the Door. Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Getting in the Door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer, and the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com.
Bill, our gold nugget today in close is the quote by Seneca, and it is, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body."
Well, anybody who works out knows how important resistance is for growth.
Mm.
If you're not meeting with resistance, you're not growing. I always use the analogy of skiing. If you're not falling once in a while, you're not becoming a better skier. You're not pushing yourself to the edge. And that's what I see in this quote of yours, Scott, is that you need to push yourself to the edge. You need to go outside your comfort zone, push yourself into difficult situations, overcome them, and then have the opportunity to grow.
Yeah, I think it's keeping track of the 3 E's: education, entertainment, and exercise, and making sure that all of them are balanced out and we're not just concentrating too much in one area.
Right. So push yourself into difficult situations and grow your mind, which is as important or more important than growing the body. And as we started out this conversation, be careful of what you're putting in your mind, just like you're careful about what you're putting in your body. The GetInTheDoorPodcast.com. GetInTheDoorPodcast.com is where you can go for the show notes and more information. My website is reachdev.com, and we're going to have resources and different things in the show notes, so go look for it there.
Next week, we're going to be covering Chapter 8 in the book, The Magic of Thinking Big, Make Your Attitudes Your Allies. And the topic that we'll be talking about is the response that we get from prospects sometimes: I need to think about it.
That's a big one. Go out and sell something.
Thanks for being with us today.